Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Raz, and in this video, we will continue our discussion about the decision analysis using the probability techniques. So if you're ready, let's start. So in our previous video discussion about decision analysis, we have discussed already 5 criteria or techniques on how to weigh and evaluate decisions using the non-probability techniques. And those 5 techniques or criteria were the maximax criterion, maximin criterion, minimax regret criterion, the Hurwitz criterion, and of course the Laplace criterion or the equal likelihood criterion. So all those 5 techniques were based on the decision maker's optimism and personal bias, which actually comes handy when we decide for our day-to-day actions in our lives. But in some cases, we would need some techniques that utilizes mathematics or statistics to be more accurate in our decision making. In this video, we will discuss about the decision analysis techniques which uses probability rather than personal bias of the decision maker. So the criteria just presented were based on the assumption that no information regarding the likelihood of the states of nature was available. So as I have just said, those 5 criteria are just some of the tools and techniques in which comes handy when we decide for our daily lives. For example, if you are trying to decide whether you would bring an umbrella or not, or whether you should study today or later, when you have to decide whether to buy a new phone or just hold on and wait for another month and wait for the price to drop. So these are the common decisions, common course of action that we usually encounter in our daily lives, which don't really need for complicated evaluation of the course of action that we have. So we tend to decide based on our guts and based on the level of optimism that we have. So in that case, we assume that there is no available information, complicated information for us to evaluate and decide for which decision or which option is to be undertaken. In those 5 criteria that I have mentioned, there were no probabilities of occurrence were assigned to the states of nature. However, it is often possible for the decision maker to know enough about the future states of nature to assign probabilities to their occurrence, especially when that decision involves in business or when it involves figures or numbers. For example, if you are trying to decide whether to invest in stocks now or to invest later, we can actually know when is the perfect time to invest for stocks, because we are now living in a world where information is available anywhere in the internet. So we can actually decide and get information that are more reliable than our guts. So here are the 2 techniques which involves the use of probabilities under decision making criteria. So we have here the first one, expected value, and the other one is the expected opportunity loss. So we will discuss each one of them using again the same illustration that we have in our previous video. So I really hope that you have watched that video before watching this discussion. Okay, so I will link that video here or in description box so you will be guided on what we need to watch. Okay, so let's have first expected value method or technique. To apply the concept of expected value as decision making criterion, the decision maker must first estimate the probability of occurrence of each state of nature. In expected value method, it is important that the decision maker knows on what probability would this state of nature would happen. For example, in our previous illustration, we have mentioned that there are 2 possible states of nature. That is when the economic condition would turn good or when the economic condition would turn bad or poor. So under each option, we need to consider what is the probability that this good condition or poor condition would happen. In that, probability is based on estimate, but this estimate is more accurate or more reliable than our guts or level of optimism, as in the case under the Hurwitz condition, in which we assigned values for the level of the optimism or the coefficient of optimism. So in this case, we will assign not the optimism but the probability that this good or poor condition will happen. So once these estimates, the probability of occurrence, have been made, the expected value for each decision alternative can be now computed. For example, in the previous problem that we have, let us assume that the probability that good economic condition is only 35%. So meaning to say, based on probability, there is only 35% chance or probability that good economic condition will actually happen. So in contrast, there is 65% chance that poor economic condition will happen. Then we will now multiply the payoff for each state of nature. So again, in our previous video lecture, this 80,000 pesos is the payoff under the state of nature, which is a good condition. So we will multiply that by 35% or 0.35 plus this 40,000 is the payoff for the state of nature under bad or poor condition, and we will multiply that by 0.65 or 65%. So the expected value when choosing warehouse is only 54,000 pesos. Meanwhile, when the decision maker has to choose the office building, the payoff under good condition is 100,000 times the probability that good economic condition will happen is 35% or 0.35 plus the payoff for the state of nature under poor condition, that is 25,000 pesos times 0.65, so that is 51,250. And of course, for the stocks, we have the 170 as the payoff under good condition times 35 or 0.35 plus negative 50,000 pesos. This is the payoff under poor condition, then times 0.65. You will get 27,000 pesos. And under time deposit, again, this 30,000 is the payoff under the good condition times 0.35 plus 20,000 times 0.65. So we'll get 23,500 pesos. And finally, we have the car for rent, the last option, in which it is said that the payoff under good condition is 96,000 pesos times the probability that good condition will happen, that is 0.35, plus the payoff under poor condition, that is 33,000 pesos times the probability that poor economic condition will happen, that is 0.65. So we will get the expected value of 55,050 pesos. So therefore, comparing all those 5 options, the car for rent alternative would give us the highest expected value. So again, in this case, we assign the values of each state of nature, whether good condition or poor condition, based on the likelihood or probability that this state of nature will happen, and not just solely based on our bias or level of optimism. So this expected value method is somehow more reliable than Hurwitz decision criterion because it is based on probability and not just based on the decision maker's level of optimism. Okay? So again, when you are using expected value, the decision is to purchase a car for rent, which would give you an expected value of 55,050 pesos. So that's the first method under the probability techniques. The other one is the expected opportunity loss, in which this criterion is closely related to expected value. Okay? It is somehow similar, similar to the expected value, the process, the steps in computing is actually the same. However, instead of using the payoff to be multiplied by the probability, we will use the expected opportunity loss, and that is the regret. Okay, so to use this criterion, we will multiply the probabilities by the regret. This regret is actually the opportunity loss for each decision outcome rather than multiplying the decision outcomes by the probabilities of their occurrence as we did for the expected monetary value. So again, in this method, instead of using the payoff like what we did expected value, we will use the value of regret like what we have computed in the minimax regret criterion, if you can still remember that. So to do so, let us first recall the values we already computed under the minimax regret criterion. So if you can still recall the minimax regret criterion, the first step is to select the maximum payoff under each state of nature. And then after that, the second step is to deduct each payoff from the maximum payoff. So in this case, under the good condition, the maximum payoff is 170,000 pesos. Okay? While under poor condition, the maximum payoff is 40,000 pesos. Then we will deduct from the maximum payoff the payoff for each option. So the payoff for warehouse under good condition is 80,000 pesos. Therefore, the regret is 90,000 pesos. While under poor condition, the payoff is 40,000 pesos, in which this is also the maximum payoff. Therefore, there will be no regret, or the regret is zero. Next, under good condition, the payoff when choosing option 2, which is to purchase an office building, the payoff would be 100,000 pesos. And the maximum payoff under good condition is 170. Therefore, the regret is 70,000 pesos. Under poor conditions, when choosing option 2 or office building, the payoff is 25,000 pesos. But the maximum payoff under poor condition is 40,000 pesos. Therefore, the regret will be 15,000 pesos. So, and so on. So, we will have the stocks, zero regret for good condition, and then for poor condition, when the decision maker chooses buying stocks and then it turned out to be poor condition, then he would get a loss of 50,000 pesos. So there will be a regret of 90,000 pesos. And of course, we have time deposit. The payoff under good condition is 30,000 pesos. And then the maximum payoff under good condition is 170. Therefore, the regret is 140,000 pesos. Under poor condition, the payoff is 20,000 pesos. And then the maximum payoff under poor condition is 40. Therefore, the regret would be 20,000 pesos. And then finally, we have the car for rent. The regret under good condition is 74, and the regret under poor condition is 7,000 pesos. We have already computed this and explained this exhaustively in our other videos under the minimax regret criterion. So after we have computed the regrets, the degree of regrets under each option, we will now multiply this regret by the probability. So as we know, there is 35% chance that good condition will happen and 65% chance that poor conditions will happen. So therefore, that is 90,000 times 35% or 0.35 plus 0 times 65% and so on. So the warehouse, the regret is 90,000 pesos times 0.35 plus 0 times 0.65. So we will get 31,500. And for the office building, we have 70,000 times 0.35 plus 15,000 times 0.65. So that is 34,250. And for the stocks, we have 0 times 0.35 and 90 times 0.65. So we will have an expected opportunity loss of 58,500. And for the time deposit, we have here the regret of 140,000 times 0.35 plus 20 times 0.65, and the regret would be 62,000 pesos. And for the car for rent, we have the regret of 74,000 times 0.35 plus 7,000 times 0.65. So we will have the expected opportunity loss of 30,450. So now that we have computed already each expected opportunity loss, we will now choose which of the options, alternatives, would give us the lowest possible opportunity loss. Okay? Because we are trying to minimize the loss. So in this case, we will decide to go for the car for rent because it will give us the lowest possible expected opportunity loss. Okay? If you will notice, the decision that we have for expected value and the decision that we have for expected opportunity loss is actually the same. Right? In the previous illustration under expected value, we suggested that the decision maker should choose the car for rent because it would give him the highest possible expected value. And in this illustration, in this solution, it is said that the decision maker should also choose the car for rent because it will give him the lowest possible opportunity loss. So therefore, whether you are using expected value or expected opportunity loss method, you will derive the same conclusion, and that is to invest for the car for rent. Because number one, it will give you the highest possible expected value of the payoff, and number two, it will give you the least expected opportunity loss. Okay? Whatever your decision in the expected value will be the same for the expected opportunity loss. Okay? To summarize, again, under expected value criterion, the expected value was 55,050 and the decision is to go for the car for rent. And under expected opportunity loss criterion, the decision is to go for same car for rent. Let's go to expected value perfect information. It is often possible to purchase additional information regarding future events and thus to make a better decision. Actually, we can now project future events with accuracy and reliability using different techniques and models available in this new era, in this generation, especially when you are trying to predict the movement of the economy or the movement of the stock prices or estimate the profitability of a business. We can actually do that. There are actually professionals that would help you make better decisions. Okay, you can hire an economist or a financial analyst or someone who is an expert in that particular field. This additional information are called perfect information because this information adds value to your decision making. However, the investor or any decision maker would be foolish to pay more for this information than he or she stands to gain an extra profit from having the information. For practicality purposes, it is not really advisable to invest or to spend on something or information which would give you a low or no benefit at all, right? Would you really pay someone to advise you whether to bring an umbrella or not? Of course not. Would you really spend or pay someone to give you information which you would get nothing or only low benefit? Would you really spend millions or hundreds of thousands of pesos just to get an information which will benefit you for only 8,000 pesos? Of course not. Who would be foolish to spend money just to get that information which has no value at all or insignificant, right? So what we are really trying to say here is that we are asking how much is the maximum amount that the decision maker would be capable to pay to spend on just to secure a perfect information. What could be the maximum amount that the investor would be willing to pay just to get that perfect information? Well, it depends. The information has some maximum value that represents the limit of what the decision maker would be willing to spend. And this value of information can be computed as an expected value, hence its name, the expected value of perfect information, or also referred to as the EVPI. So, for example, the perfect information confirms that there is only 35% chance or probability that good economic condition would likely to happen. So we have here a payoff table for the option alternatives available and the states of nature. So under good condition, the alternative to purchase a warehouse for lease would give us a payoff of 80,000 pesos. But under poor condition, purchasing a warehouse for lease would give us only a payoff of 40,000 pesos, and so on. So from this given table, we will choose the best or the maximum payoff under each state of nature. So for good condition, the maximum payoff is here, the 170,000 pesos, and that is the stock alternative option. And under poor condition, the maximum payoff is here, the 40,000 pesos, and that is purchasing a warehouse for lease. So we will select these two, this 170 and 40,000 pesos, and we will multiply this by the chance, the 35% for good economic condition and 65% for poor economic condition. So we will get the expected value of the decision given the perfect information is 170,000 times 0.35 plus 40,000 times 0.65, or we have a total of 85,500. This 85,500 is the expected value of the decision given the perfect information. So just a while ago, we have illustrated the expected value without perfect information, and we suggested that the decision maker would better go for car for rent because it will give him an expected value of 55,050 pesos. So that was the best expected value without the perfect information. While given the perfect information, given this available information, we got in an expected value of the decision that is 85,500. So this 85,500 is the expected value of that decision with perfect information. So this is not yet the expected value of perfect information, but this is the expected value of the decision given that perfect information. So to compute the EVPI, the expected value of the decision given the perfect information is subtracted with the expected value of the decision without the perfect information. So hence our formula will be, to compute the EVPI, we will subtract the expected value without the perfect information from the expected value of the decision with perfect information. Thus, the EVPI is equal to EVWPI less the EVWOPI, or without perfect information. So here we have the EVPI is equal to 85,500 less 55,050 pesos. So again, this 85,500, this is the expected value of the decision with a perfect information. While this 55,050 pesos, this is the expected value of the decision without the perfect information. So deducting this EV without perfect information from the EV with perfect information, the difference of 30,450, that is now the value or the expected value of the perfect information. Okay, so this EVPI is actually the maximum amount that the decision maker or investor would be willing to pay, to spend, just to get or secure the perfect information. Okay, so this is the maximum amount that the investor would pay to purchase the perfect information from some other source, such as an economic forecaster. So if it will cost you 40,000 pesos just to get that information, then don't go for that. Okay? Because you will only lose. But if that perfect information has a value or will cost you for, let's say, 20,000 pesos, then go for that. Because anyway, the expected value is 30,450. This is the maximum limit that any investor or decision maker would be willing to spend on. Okay? And also, if you notice, this EVPI is also equals to the expected opportunity loss. If you can still recall, it means to say that the expected value of the decision without the perfect information, that decision to go for car for rent, this 55,050 plus the expected opportunity loss, combining them together, the expected value without perfect information plus the expected opportunity loss, combining them together, adding them together, we would get the expected value of the decision with perfect information. Always remember, the EVPI will always equal to the expected opportunity loss. Okay? I hope you have learned a lot from this video, and if you have questions or clarifications, comment them down below. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. And if you're new to this channel, please subscribe and click the bell so you'll be notified whenever I will upload new videos. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Bye.